It's the number one thing you can do to turn off the stress response. Hey there, I'm Angela, an architect, feng shui practitioner, and researcher who has devoted my career to studying the science behind design for well being, otherwise known as salutogenesis, so you don't have to. And today we are using my salutogenesis deck to talk about very specifically how we get used to, even addicted to the stress response, but there is something very simple that you can do about it. And more important than that, there are ways you can set up your space and design to promote you doing even more of it. So, what we're going to do is draw a card from each of the two halves of my salutogenesis deck. The core concepts, foundational issues related to what causes health or dis-ease, otherwise known as disease, and 5 theories that make up design for well-being, which I've also paired with 5 elements out of feng shui. So I drew the cards for this week. And again, I talk about these theories and the science specifically as the two things relate to one another. So I trust that the cards I drew are the cards we need to hear for this week. And also, what I talk about is going to be very focused to how the two work together. So every time you listen, you're going to learn something new, which is why you should like and subscribe to my channel. All right, the card that I drew from Foundational Concepts is normalization. And you can see here on the card, there is a pot slowly coming to a boil. And that's really what normalization is. It is the process of having experiences, behaviors, or situations that become acceptable because they repeat over time. Everybody's doing it. Nobody seems to think anything of it. It allows things to be taken for granted. Now, if that's a good thing, that's great, but it can also be bad work habits, bad processes. So we need to watch out for normalization, but we can also use normalization to instill positive behaviors. So if we want to introduce something new and we're able to repeat it over time, we're going to get used to it. And it's going to change our set point, move it up a little bit, and become our new normal. And that makes a really great pairing with the companion card from the aspects part of the deck, which is movement. Now, movement is part of the aspect of salutogenesis, otherwise known as relaxation response. Relaxation response is essentially the setting of the opposite of our stress response. So you may not know this, but our autonomic nervous system, and it's called autonomic because we don't necessarily have the ability to control it, has two parts. The sympathetic, which is the stress response, otherwise known as fight or flight, and the parasympathetic, which is sometimes referred to as rest and digest. It is the restoration side of our being. It's where we can relax and we can replenish what has been taken out of us by having that stress response. And you can see on the card how that is reflected. So we are with the feng shui element of water, and water is specifically about healing, flowing, restoring. So it's very aligned with exactly what happens with relaxation response. That waterfall you see in the background is about the unsettling, the chaotic, that stress response that we've experienced. The rushing river is the moving away from the stress response, that kind of clearing out of our system. And the boat here represents taking action, that safe passage away from whatever that trigger for the stress response was, which is very appropriate because movement itself represents a conscious choice. And movement is a really often overlooked but important and powerful tool for helping to reset after we've experienced something stressful. How does that work? Well, just the act of moving releases physical and mental tension. It allows us to have a release of endorphins, including dopamine and serotonin, which are powerful neurotransmitters that help to put us back in a state where we're receptive to pleasure. Our motivation will increase and we feel more emotionally balanced. And while any kind of movement will do that, specifically rhythmic or mindful movement can really help to shift because we are having to pay a little bit more attention to what we're doing, not the thing that is creating stress for us. So, what does that look like in our spaces? Well, it means we need to think about having opportunities to pace, to rock, to meditate, even to dance or do yoga. So, first thing I want to pay attention to is what I call closed loop versus open loop circulation. So, a lot of times we've experienced a hallway or a corridor that is just a straight line. There's an endpoint there. So if we walk down it, we're probably walking somewhere where maybe we feel we don't belong. And when we get to the end, we'd have to turn around and retrace our steps. People are much less likely to do that. On the other hand, if the circulation is in an open loop, that means there's no dead end. So you could walk in a circle or a square or a rectangle shape. And preferably, if this is somewhere that's more of a public area in a building or in your home, it means that you can walk around the rooms without a dead end. When I was a kid, we used to love being able to chase each other in circles, and we would notice that some family or friends had houses where you could do that and some didn't. So that's the difference between open and closed loop circulation. Gives people that opportunity to walk, to pace, to move. Open stairways are another good way to keep people from being too sedentary. A lot of times in buildings, the stairs can be attached to a fire alarm or they can be locked so you can get out, but you can't get back in. Well, that is going to discourage people from taking the stairs, especially if the elevator is much more visible and prominent. It's something called behavioral economics. We're going to automatically want to do what feels the easier choice for us. But if we flip that around and we put a really enticing, monumental open stair that connects some floors together, and it is what we see first. And the elevators are more in the background. Studies have shown that people are more likely to take the stairs. They're more likely to choose movement over stillness. And that's important for a lot of reasons because moving is good for us, but it's also a way that we are having to decant that stress response. So think about that in buildings. If you can take the stairs, you want to make sure that you do. And if you are designing a building or involved in the design of a building, you want to advocate for more of those open stairs. You also want to think about having destinations that people want to head to. So again, we're encouraging movement instead of being sedentary. Then there's the idea of rhythmic movement. So things like rocking chairs or balance balls, or even some task chairs allow you to move a little bit more freely in them. Those are really important for self-soothing. That repetitive motion kind of lulls you and makes you feel more relaxed. Think about rocking a baby. There's a reason why we do that. It soothes the baby and it helps its nervous system to re-regulate. And the same thing is true for all of us. That's why we love porch swings and things like that. So again, think about where you can have things like rockers or swings or other ways of moving, even intentional movements like having a labyrinth that someone can walk. Those are great ways to easily incorporate movement into indoor or outdoor spaces, but to encourage people to work through, to burn off the adrenaline, the cortisol that is all part of the stress response, and also to get into a more reflective and meditative state of mind so that they can begin to activate the relaxation response, their parasympathetic nervous system, and to feel a lot better. It's also a really important part of feng shui that there is a open energy current. Feng shui does not like dead end corridors or long straight stairways, because in feng shui, the energy moves too fast when there is too much of a linear flow, and it needs to be slowed down. And energy can get stuck and become stagnant when there is no circulation around a space or through a space. So even when we look at this from a purely energetic point of view, we want to maintain circulation. We want to maintain circulation that flows, that meanders, that encourages curiosity, discovery, and movement to promote well-being. I hope you've been inspired today to think about movement in a way that maybe you haven't before, and to also realize that movement is part of your mental and physical health. It is going to help to turn off that stress response and make a huge difference. This can really be a game changer, especially when we build it into our spaces and encourage the activities that promote healthy movement, mindful movement, normalize it, and make it part of just the way we live our lives in a healthier and better way. So if you'd love to learn more great tips like this, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. It is the best way that you can support it. And again, share your feedback with me. I love hearing about what you're trying, what differences you're noticing, as well as if you have any questions for me. But thanks again for listening, and I will see you next time.